Today's topic is related to the last part of your heat transfer, that is unsteady state systems. Now, when we say unsteady state, we'll be basically dealing with a very simple example of a rectangular slab, and we're not going to go into much brief of how to derive the proper derivation, but just that part of unsteady state where when you put t equal to infinity, it should approach the steady state system. Clear? We'll be doing that. What we did previously for your unsteady state part for fluid systems. Clear? Now, before we start with the unsteady state part in heat transfer, there is a one specific dimensionless term called Biot number. Now, this is very important dimensionless number. Now, what is this Biot number? Biot number is basically the ratio of the difference of driving force in the solid state to the difference of driving force in the liquid phase. So it's this ratio is called as Biot number. Now, the driving force in heat transfer can be the temperature difference. The driving force in the mass transfer can be the concentration difference. So the temperature difference in the solid to the temperature difference in the liquid, that ratio is a Biot number. And similarly, the concentration difference in the solid and the concentration difference in the liquid, that ratio is the Biot number for the mass transfer. Now, when we say Biot number for heat transfer, we normally represent it as Bi with the subscript as H, which is H L by K. It's expressed as HL by K, where K is the thermal conductivity of the solids. And for Biot number for the mass transfer is Kc, the average coefficient L by diffusivity dA. This is the Biot number in the mass transfer. Now, when we say LCH, okay, now in both the cases we write the term LCH. LCH is basically the characteristic length, the length on which the system is being studied, the length or the distance over which the system is being studied, where the analysis are being done. That is called the characteristic length. Now, this can be for a temperature in terms of the heat transfer, or it can be the concentration in terms of your mass transfer. Now, if the difference in the driving force of the solids, difference in the driving force of the solids is much less than the difference in the driving force in the liquids, then we can say that Biot number is much less than 1. Much less than 1. Obviously, if the numerator term is very much smaller in comparison to the denominator, then Biot number is less than 1. So when this condition arises that Biot number is much less than 1, we normally term that system or that case to be called lumped parameter analysis. It's called lumped parameter analysis. That means the dependent variables are considered to be uniform in the solid phase. That means there is hardly any difference or hardly any temperature or hardly any concentration difference in the solid object which we are considering for the system. So it's called lumped parameter analysis for a Biot number less than 1. Now, when we say, let's talk about Biot number for the heat transfer. Biot number for the heat transfer. Now, it's expressed as the temperature difference in the solids to the temperature difference in the liquids. Now, if the temperature difference in the solid is uniform, that means in a solid body, the temperature is not varying to much larger extent. So, in that case, we assume that the temperature throughout the system is stable. That means it's a lumped system, and in that case, the Biot number is much less than 1. But according to literature, it's generally assumed that the internal resistance to heat transfer is negligible in the solids. I again repeat, normally it's assumed that the internal resistance, I'll write it down, the internal resistance to heat transfer is negligible, and delta T is assumed to be uniform in the solid case. So that's why uniform in the solid system. So that's why the Biot number for in such cases less than 0.1. It's assumed to be this value. Second is if the value is between 0.1 to 40, between 0.1 to 40, then we assume that the internal and the external resistance to heat transfer is almost same. Internal and external heat resistance is almost same in magnitude. That means the value of the internal resistance and the external resistance is almost same. And if the Biot number is greater than 40, then we say that the external heat resistance is negligible. Then the external heat resistance is negligible. So Biot number is basically for a heat transfer is divided into three parts: less than 0.1, greater than 40, and in between 0.1 to 40. Now, when we say all these three cases, generally, if this part is the solid part and this part is the liquid part, so for Biot number less than 0.1, it's generally represented as, if let's say this is the film, liquid film which is being formed, then in the solid it remains the same, and this is the temperature profile in the in such case where Biot number is less than 0.1. Second is if the Biot number is between 0.1 to 40, and we have a solid state and again a liquid state, and let's say this is the film which is being formed on the solid surface, then the internal and external resistance are of same magnitude, then we can say that this is the heat the temperature variation in the in such case where Biot number is between 0.1 to 40. And the third case is if the Biot number is greater than 40. So we have solid and a liquid system. And in such case, if this is the the film resistance, then this is the variation. And since the external heat is negligible, so external, if we say that to be a liquid, then this the temperature variation is almost same. So that's the variation in the Biot number for greater than 40. So you can clearly see if the internal resistance is negligible, internal and external are almost same, and external is negligible. So these are the three cases where we consider the Biot number. Now let's take a simple example of a heating of a rectangular slab, and over there we'll assume one of the three cases. We'll study the analysis of one of the three cases. So we'll take an example of a heating of a rectangular slab. Heating of a rectangular slab. Now consider a rectangular slab of thickness 12. I'll just make a figure of it. Let's say this is the rectangular slab. Let's say the height of the slab is h, the width is w, and the thickness is 2L. The thickness is twice the L. Now, that's the center of axis. So let's say this is Z, this is Y, and in the upper direction it is X. Okay. Now initially the slab temperature is at a uniform temperature T0. Initially the slab temperature is at uniform temperature T0. At T equal to 0, the temperature at both the surfaces, that is Z equal to plus minus L. So either of the way, over here and in this side, both the slab surfaces are exposed to a fluid at Z equal to plus minus L. The slab is exposed to a fluid of temperature T infinity, which is much greater than T0. That means over this part surface and on this part of this surface, both the surfaces are exposed to a fluid which is having a temperature T infinity. That means we can say over this side is T infinity and on this side it is T infinity. Now we are assuming that the Biot number is much greater than 40. This we are assuming. That means in the liquid surface which is in contact with the fluid, the external resistance is negligible. That is, the external resistance to heat transfer is negligible, and in that case the Biot number is greater than 40. So what we need to now determine is the temperature profile. We need to determine the temperature profile within the slab. So we need to determine the temperature profile within the slab. So for this, what we do is we consider a shell. Give me a minute. Right. Now what we do is we consider a shell of, let's say, thickness delta Z. So in this way the conduction is occurring QZ at Z, and in this way the conduction is at Z plus delta Z, because both the surfaces are exposed to the fluid at much temperature. So what is happening is basically the heat is being transferred in this direction, and it can also be transferred in the other way also. So both thing is occurring. So what we do is we assume that, let's say, the heat is conduction in one given direction, that is it is entering into this side and leaving in this direction. It can be the other way also. Now for that, in order to resolve that, so what we're doing is we are considering one dimension conduction, and in that case we have the condition that the length with respect to the height, this length, the thickness with respect to the height is much less than 1. That is, it's a very small thickness in comparison to the height. And second is length with respect to the width also is also much less than 1. So this thickness with respect to the width is also less than 1. So what is happening is we assume that this thickness is much smaller, so the conduction is only occurring in one given direction. So what we do is we now apply the heat balance on this shell of thickness delta X. So in order to apply that, so we have rate of heat input minus rate of heat output, plus there is a generation and the accumulation. Now there is no such generation within the slab. So whatever is there, it's because of in and out. So heat entering in this direction So what will be the cross-sectional area? That is W into H. So cross-sectional area W into H into QZ entering in the Z direction. Similarly, out Z plus delta Z equal to accumulation. How much heat is being accumulated within this slab? So that will be the MCP, basically MCP delta T. Now MCP will be a mass, will be like volume into the density. Now what will be the volume? That will be WH delta Z into rho into Cp cap into del T by del Z. So this is the accumulation of heat within this slab. So now if you divide this entire equation by WH delta Z and take the limit delta Z approaches 0. So what we have is rho Cp del T by del Z equal to limit delta Z approaches 0. So we have Qz minus Qz and over delta Z. So this comes out to be minus del Q by del Z equal to rho Cp del T by del Z. And according to conduction, what is Qz minus K dt by dz. So if you substitute this term over here, so we have a rho Cp cap dt by dz equal to K del square T by del Z. Now, okay, with respect to T, so make a correction over here. This is rate, so it is with respect to T. So we have T over here. So it is T. Now you can see the temperature is a function of Z as well as time. So dimensions, so the boundary conditions have to be in such a way that it satisfies both the things. So that is initially at T equal to 0, time equal to 0, the temperature is T naught. And the other boundary condition, that Z equal to plus L, T is equal to T infinity, and Z equal to minus L, T is equal to T infinity. So this is the initial condition and these are the boundary conditions. So we're going to solve it. Now, since at the center, since it's a symmetrical object, so at Z equal to 0, since it's a symmetrical body, so at Z equal to 0, so this represents the symmetry through which there is no heat flux is occurring. So it's a symmetrical plane, it's a point of symmetry. So there is no heat flux over here. So we say dt by dz is 0 at Z equal to 0. So we can say, so these conditions, they can be modified. So at t equal to 0, we have t equal to t naught, at Z equal to L, because at L or L minus L, it's the same. So we're taking only one L. So at Z equal to L, it's T infinity, and at Z equal to 0, we have dt by dz is 0. So with these boundary conditions, we're going to try to solve your given equation. Now, if you look at this equation properly, that is rho Cp dt by dz is equal to K d square T by dz square. Okay. This dt. So if you look at these two terms, now this term which is over here, it's the rate of accumulation term. Rate of accumulation. And if you look at the magnitude of this, the magnitude will be, magnitude is basically rho Cp, the temperature difference with respect to time, rho Cp delta T by dt. So it is this thing. And if you look at this term, this is basically rate of conduction term. Rate of conduction term. And if you look at the magnitude of this, it will be K T infinity minus T naught by L square. It's the magnitude is this because K dt square. Obviously, it's a double derivative of the temperature, so it's T infinity minus T naught, and dz z represents the thickness of L square. Now, if you take the ratio of these two terms, which are the magnitude of these terms, that is, if you take the ratio of rate of conduction to rate of accumulation. So what do we have basically? So K T infinity minus T naught by L square into you have T by rho Cp T infinity minus T naught. So this gets cancelled up with this. So it comes out to be K T L square by rho Cp. And what is K by rho Cp? It's alpha. So alpha T by L square. So this particular term is called as Fourier number. This particular dimensionless term is called as Fourier's number, which is the ratio of rate of conduction to rate of accumulation. Clear? So this is dependent upon the thermophysical properties of the material, that is alpha, K rho Cp, time, and the thickness of the plate. Now, in order to solve this equation, that is this standard equation, what we do is we're gonna introduce a dimensionless terms. We're gonna introduce a dimensionless term, and then we're gonna try to solve it. And in that dimensionless term, one dimensionless term will be your Fourier number. Will be Fourier number, because Fourier number is nothing but ratio, and that ratio leads to some sort of a dimensionless term. So we're gonna solve it. Now, in order to solve this thing, let's take some dimensionless variables. Dimensionless variables. First is theta. That is nothing but the temperature ratio. The other one will be the characteristic length dimensionless, that is Z by L. And the other one will be the, with respect to tau, that is the Fourier number, alpha T by. So we'll take these three terms. So your rho Cp, that is dt by dt, is K d square T by dz square. Now let's try to convert this into a dimensionless term. So in order to convert this dimensionless term, from here we have T. T can be written as T infinity minus T naught into theta, and obviously T infinity minus that. Similarly, Z can be written as L into theta, and time can be written as L square tau by. So we're gonna put these three variables over here and try to resolve this thing. So if you can solve this thing, so rho Cp dt. So if T is defined as this thing, what will be dt? Dt will be nothing but T infinity minus T naught into theta. D theta, sorry, in fact d theta. So that can be written here. So T infinity minus T naught into d theta. And what is time? So dt can be written as L square by alpha into beta. So L square by alpha into beta. Similarly, T over here. Now T over here again. So that can be T infinity minus T naught into L square theta by Z. Z over here is L into Z. So L square d theta. Now you can cancel out the terms. Now L square gets cancelled with L square over here. T infinity minus T naught gets cancelled up. And we have alpha rho Cp that gets cancelled up with all the terms. So you're finally left with is d theta by d tau as del square theta by del theta. So this is how you convert your equation, your general equation, that is this equation, into your dimensionless equation. So this is your dimensionless equation. which can easily be solved. Now, depending upon the boundary conditions, now the boundary conditions were, these were the boundary conditions which are here. So similarly, the same boundary conditions can be, used over here. Let me write it down. So boundary conditions, which initially the boundary conditions were, let me write it again over here. Initially, the boundary conditions were in the term of dimensions t equal to t naught, t was equal to t naught. At z equal to 0, it was dt by dz equal to 0, and at z equal to L, it was t infinity. Now, in a dimensionless variable, that will be tau equal to 0, theta is 1. When zeta equal to 1, theta is 0. And when zeta is equal to 0, del theta by del zeta. So this leads to this leads to this, and this leads to this thing. So it is this entirely, this equal to t infinity. Okay, let me check. Yes, all right. So these are the dimensions. So with these dimensionless conditions, we're gonna try to solve your dimensionless equation. Now this dimensionless equation, that is d theta by d tau will do del square theta by del z square. Now this equation, which is over here, can be resolved with the help of a method of called separation of variables. Separation of variables. Now, in order to solve this thing, what we do is we finally represent your theta, because theta will be function of tau and zeta. This is zeta. So theta will be function of tau and zeta. So we can generally say that, let's say it is a function of f and g, where f is pure terms of tau and g will be pure terms of zeta, and the product of both of them represents theta. So with using this particular term, this equation can be written as 1 by f into del f by del tau and 1 by g. Okay, let me won't be clear. So theta with respect to tau. So in that case, if you differentiate theta with respect to tau, so g term will be constant. So it will be del f by del tau. And if you differentiate theta with respect to zeta, so in that case, f will be constant. So f can be taken out. So del square g by del theta square. Or then you can combine your f and g terms separately. So 1 by f del f by del tau and 1 by g del square g by del theta square. So both of them, they are separated, and let's say they are equal to some constant minus lambda square. So I'm taking a constant term as minus lambda square. That's a constant. So it can be separately solved. One term can be 1 by f del f by del tau as this constant. The other term can be the g term equal to this constant. Now, why we are taking negative sign, that will I'll gonna explain it later on, because negative constant means that it will decay as t will approach towards infinity. So that's why I put a negative sign over here. Now let's try to solve this thing. So df by del tau plus lambda square f is equal to 0. So that's a standard equation, and the solution is f is equal to e raised to power minus lambda square tau. So that's the solution of your f. And similarly, g will be del square g by del theta square plus lambda square g is equal to 0, and it's a solution. Standard solution is for these boundary conditions. It's basically known as a very famous equation, that is Sturm-Liouville equation, and it's a general solution. I'm writing up directly the general solution. So general solution is g is equal to c1 sine of lambda zeta plus c2 sine of lambda cos of lambda. Now you don't need, because this part is basically your transient part, and this part is your steady state part. So let's finish up the solution till to the this steady state part, because we are not dealing with the transit expression. So as a result, the overall theta will be the function of this term into this particular term. So I'll finally write down the entire solution, because you don't need to solve for the transit part every time. So I'll write down the final complete solution. Now, depending upon the value of zeta 1, g0, zeta minus 1 is equal to 0. So we'll be able to find out the constants over here. And I'll write down the final solution of your theta, because theta that will comprise of the f function and the g function. So finally, the theta which will come out to be is this thing. So you don't need to remember this expression, but it's just giving you the final expression, because you're not dealing with the transient part over here. But I'm just giving you the idea how the transient part is basically solved when such situation arises. But in the exam, we don't gonna get the transient part. In exam, what you will get is basically how to convert your dimension equation into a dimensionless term. That can be asked in the exam. But in the exam, you don't need to solve that this equation. Okay, so I'm giving you the final solution. So the final solution is 2 by pi minus 1 raised to power n over n half, where n varies from 0 to infinity, into exponential of minus n plus half square pi square tau, that is this f function, into cos of n plus half pi zeta. That is something you're going to get from the theta. Now this is the complete expression of theta. Now you can see theta is a function of tau and theta is a function of zeta. That is, theta is a function of the time term and theta is a function of the dimension, that is the length term. Now as tau approaches infinity, so exponential of minus infinity will approach towards 0. So this entire expression will approach towards 0. So 0 means t is approaching towards t infinity, because theta, what is theta? It is t infinity minus t over t infinity minus t naught. So when time approaches infinity or tau approaches infinity, so theta will approach towards 0, and that means t is approaching towards t infinity. That means if over here the temperature is T infinity, over here the temperature. So after steady state is achieved, so there will be a uniform temperature throughout this slab. Clear? So that happens in the case of the steady state. So that means you have kept the slab for infinite time in the open. So what will happen? The slab will attain the same temperature as that of the surrounding. But in a transient phase, before that, so this will be the expression of the temperature which will be occurring within this slab, and that expression is a function of time as well as the distance. Clear? So this finishes up with the unsteady state part in this case. Now anything else